Snow piled on my windshield as I watched the video on my phone. 3 seconds in, I realized this was not a cute clip. It was footage from my cat's collar camera, capturing the exact moment my stepmother slapped me behind closed doors. Without this, my family would still believe I pushed her. Not that she threw herself against the cabinet to frame me. My cat does not keep secrets. He just walked straight into the truth she had hidden for 10 years. My name is Maggie Elliott, and at 33 years old, sitting alone in a freezing sedan in Silverford, Colorado, I felt less like a lead analyst for a major cybersecurity firm and more like a ghost haunting her own life. The engine of my car had been off for 10 minutes, but I could not bring myself to open the door and step out into the biting wind. The snow was falling thick and heavy tonight, fat flakes sticking to the windshield and turning the parking lot of Nova Shield Analytics into a blurred, white abstraction. Inside the vehicle, the air was turning stale and cold, visible in small gray puffs every time I exhaled. My fingers were numb where they gripped the steering wheel, but that physical numbness was a mercy compared to the dread pooling in my stomach. It was 2 days before Christmas. The world outside was decorated in aggressive cheer, with twinkling lights strung up on the lampposts and wreaths hanging on the office doors I had just exited. But in the silence of my car, the only light came from the screen of my phone, which sat face up on the passenger seat like a ticking bomb. Then it vibrated. The sound was a harsh, mechanical buzz against the leather seat, loud enough to make me flinch. A notification banner slid across the top of the locked screen. It was the group chat. The Elliott family. My heart did a traitorous double beat, a reflex honed over decades of conditioning. It was that sickening mixture of hope that maybe this time they were checking to see if I got home safely through the storm, and the crushing certainty that they wanted something. I reached out, my hand trembling slightly, and unlocked the phone. The blue light washed over my face, harsh and unforgiving in the dark car. There were 3 new messages. The first was from Vivian Cole, my stepmother. "Maggie, darling," the text began, the endearment sitting on the screen like a decorative garnish on a plate of rotten meat. "Change of plans for Christmas dinner. The in-laws are flying in last minute, so the house is going to be absolutely packed. We simply do not have enough chairs at the dining table for everyone, so we will need you to sit this one out during the main meal. However, we are really counting on you to come over early and handle the cooking. You know how much Martin loves your roast turkey, and I just do not have the energy to manage the sides and the pies this year. Please be here by 8 in the morning." I read the message twice. I did not blink. The logic was breathtaking in its cruelty. There was no room for me at the table that belonged to the father I had lived with since I was a child. But there was plenty of room for me in the kitchen to slave over a hot stove for 12 hours. She was not asking me to dinner. She was hiring a caterer and paying them in insults. Before I could even process the familiar sting of rejection, the second message loaded. It was from my father, Martin Elliott. "While you are out shopping for the ingredients," he wrote, piggybacking off his wife's demands without a second of hesitation, "could you stop by the electronics store? I have been looking at that new Series 9 smartwatch, the black titanium one. It would make a wonderful gift for your old dad. You know I deserve a little pampering from my filial daughter." He included a link to the product page. I clicked it, purely out of morbid curiosity. The price tag was $800. $800 for a man who had not bought me a birthday present since I was 19. The phrase, filial daughter, made my bile rise. It was a weaponized term he used whenever his credit card was maxed out or his wife wanted something he could not afford to give her. Then came the third message, the cherry on top of this toxic sundae. It was from Sophie, my half-sister, the golden child, the future lawyer who was currently finishing her degree at a tuition rate that could have bought a small house. She sent a sticker of a cartoon bear hugging a heart, followed by, "Oh my God, yes, Maggie is the best chef in the world. Nobody makes the stuffing like you do. Sis, it would not be Christmas without your food." It was formatted as a compliment. Sophie was a master of the backhanded praise. By calling me the best chef, she was not appreciating my skill. She was locking me into my role. If I refused now, I would not just be saying no to Vivian. I would be ruining Sophie's Christmas. I would be the bad sister who deprived the family of the best stuffing. It was a cage made of gold stars. I stared at the 3 messages, the white text bubbles stacking up on the right side of the screen like bricks in a wall that was slowly closing me in. The heater in the car had lost the last of its residual warmth. I could see my breath fogging up the rearview mirror. I looked up at my reflection in that mirror. My eyes looked hollow. Dark circles etched deep into the pale skin. I looked older than 33. I looked worn down, eroded by years of being the water that broke against the rock of their indifference. Slowly, almost unconsciously, my right hand drifted to my left arm. I pushed up the sleeve of my heavy wool coat, then the sleeve of the cashmere sweater underneath. I winced as the cold air hit my skin. But the pain that followed was not from the temperature. There, on the fleshy part of my upper arm, was a bruise. It was fading now, turning a sickly shade of yellow mixed with green, the color of old parchment. It was shaped like a thumbprint. Vivian had explained this bruise to the family 2 weeks ago at Sunday brunch. "Maggie is so clumsy lately," she had laughed, pouring syrup over Martin's pancakes. She walked right into the edge of the pantry door. "You really need to be more careful, dear. People might think you are losing your balance." I had sat there, chewing my dry toast, and nodded. "Yeah," I had said. "Clumsy." But looking at the mark now, under the dome light of my car, the memory of what actually happened hit me with the force of a physical blow. It was not a pantry door. The memory played out in my mind, sharp and high definition. It was 2 weeks ago. I had come over to drop off a check, money for the roof repair that Martin swore he would pay back. I was in the living room. Vivian was there, wearing a silk robe, holding a glass of Chardonnay even though it was only 2 in the afternoon. I had made the mistake of asking when Dad might be able to return the $2,000 I had lent him for his car repair 6 months prior. I needed the money for my own rent. I remembered the sound first, the click of the deadbolt sliding home on the front door. Vivian had walked over, calm as a glacier, and locked us in. "You are being very selfish, Maggie," she had said, her voice dropping an octave. "Harassing your father about money when you know his blood pressure is high." I had tried to argue. "It is not harassment, Vivian. It is my savings." That was when she moved. For a woman of 55, she was terrifyingly fast. She lunged, her hand clamping onto my arm like a vice. Her nails were painted a deep crimson, and I felt them dig into my skin, breaking the surface, finding the nerve. She yanked me toward her, her face inches from mine, smelling of expensive wine and expensive perfume. "You ungrateful little brat," she hissed. I tried to pull away, stumbling back. She shoved me. Hard. I hit the wall, the air leaving my lungs in a rush. "Do not you dare walk away from me," she screamed. "Martin!" she shrieked, her voice transforming instantly into a wail of terror. "Martin, help! She is hurting me!" I stood there, paralyzed, my arm throbbing where she had gripped me, and from the hallway, just beyond the kitchen door, I heard a soft sound. Meow. It was Pumpkin, my cat, or he used to be my cat, until I moved into an apartment that did not allow pets and had to leave him behind. He was sitting there, his orange tail twitching, watching us with wide, unblinking green eyes. He had seen it all: the lock, the grab, the shove, the self-inflicted staged fall. But he was just a cat. He could not speak. He could not tell Martin that his wife was a monster who only showed her teeth when the audience was gone. The memory faded, leaving me shivering in the front seat of my car. I pulled my sleeve down, covering the yellow bruise. My phone buzzed again. I looked down. It was a voice note from Vivian. I should not have played it. I knew I should not have played it, but the conditioning ran deep. I pressed play. Vivian's voice filled the small cabin of the car. It was soft, cloying, dripping with that fake maternal sweetness that made my skin crawl. "Maggie, sweetie," the recording said, I noticed you read the messages but did not reply. I hope you are not sulking. You know, sometimes your father and I worry about your emotional stability. Do not forget that this family took you in. We saved you. We gave you a home when your mother died and left you all alone in this world. You would be on the street if it were not for us. We just want you to show a little gratitude. That is not too much to ask, is it? Just be a good girl and come cook the turkey. For your mother's memory. The recording ended. Something inside my chest, something that had been pulled taut for 13 years, suddenly snapped. It was not a loud noise, it was a silent, internal rupture. She had mentioned my mother. She had dared to use the death of the woman who actually loved me as a bargaining chip to get me to peel potatoes and roast a bird I was not allowed to eat. We saved you. They had not saved me. They had consumed me. They had eaten my inheritance, eaten my self-esteem, and now they were trying to eat my dignity. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. The muscle memory was screaming at me to type the words I had typed 1,000 times before. Of course, Vivian, I will be there at 8. I will buy the watch. Dad, thanks, Sophie. It would be so easy. It would stop the conflict. It would keep the peace. But looking at the snow piling up on the glass, burying me alive in this white tomb, I realized I did not want peace, not their version of it. I looked at the little icon of the microphone blinking on the screen. No, I whispered. My voice sounded foreign to my own ears, hoarse, rough. I did not type a response. I did not send an apology. I did not explain that I had to work, or that I was sick, or that my car had broken down. I did not offer a lie to smooth over the truth. I reached out and pressed the volume button on the side of the phone, holding it down until the icon showed that the device was silent. Then, with a sudden burst of energy that came from a place of pure, cold rage, I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. It landed face down on the leather. I stared at the back of the phone case. I was not going to cook their dinner. I was not going to buy the watch. I was not going to be the prop in their family tableau. For the first time in my life, the silence in the car did not feel lonely. It felt like the calm before a storm. I put the car into gear, the headlights cutting through the swirling snow, and pulled out of the parking lot. I was going home, but not to them. I was going to my empty apartment, to my silence, and to the plan that was just starting to form in the darkest corners of my mind. The wire had snapped, and they had no idea what they had just unleashed. As I drove away from the office parking lot, the rhythmic thumping of the windshield wipers against the heavy snow became a metronome for my memory. The silence in the car was heavy, but it was not empty. It was crowded with ghosts. Specifically, it was crowded with the version of myself from 14 years ago. A girl who had no idea that the woman welcoming her home with open arms was actually constructing a prison cell, brick by brick. I needed to understand how I had ended up here, freezing in a sedan, terrified of a woman who was not even my blood relative. To understand the fear, I had to go back to the beginning. I was 19 years old when my biological mother died. It was a slow, agonizing cancer that stripped the life out of our house long before it took her breath. When the funeral was over, I was a shell of a person, hollowed out by grief and looking for anywhere to land. That was when my father, Martin, reintroduced Vivian. I remembered the first time she really stepped into the role. I was sitting at the kitchen table in my father's house, staring at a bowl of cereal I could not eat. Vivian floated into the room. She was elegant, always smelling of lavender and expensive hairspray. She did not try to hug me too tight. She did not try to force me to talk. She just placed a hand on my shoulder, her manicured fingers cool against my skin. I know I cannot replace her, Maggie, she had said, her voice soft and melodic, and I would never try. But I promised your father I would care for you like my own flesh and blood. You are safe here. I believed her. God help me. I wanted to believe her so badly. For the first 2 years, she was perfect. She was the architect of a new, functional family life. She cooked elaborate dinners. She bought me thoughtful gifts, a scarf that matched my eyes, A leather-bound journal for my thoughts. She called me daughter in front of the neighbors. When I started college, it was Vivian who sat down with a calculator and a furrowed brow, looking over my dormitory expenses. "This is ridiculous," she had declared, tapping the paper with a pen. "Why are you paying this much to share a bathroom with strangers? Move back home, Maggie. We have the space. Save the money for your future. It is what a smart young woman would do." It sounded so logical. It sounded like love. So, I moved back into the guest room, grateful that I had a stepmother who cared about my financial well-being. I did not see the trap shutting until I was already inside it. The first time it happened, I was 21 years old. I was not a child. I was a legal adult. I was a junior in college with a 3.8 GPA. That is what made the violence so jarring, so confusing. It did not fit the narrative of child abuse. It was something else entirely. It was a Tuesday afternoon. The only crime I had committed was answering the front door when Mrs. Higgins, the elderly neighbor, came by to ask about the recycling schedule. I had chatted with her for 5 minutes, laughing about the weather. When I closed the front door and turned around, Vivian was standing in the hallway. Her face was not the mask of the doting mother anymore. It was hard, cold stone. "You were flirting with her gardener," she said. It was not a question. "What? No. I was talking to Mrs. Higgins," I stammered, confused. "Do not lie to me. I saw you checking him out. You are making this family look cheap." Before I could argue, she walked past me into the living room. She picked up the television remote. I watched her thumb press the volume button. She held it down. The sound of a daytime talk show swelled, filling the room, bouncing off the walls. The audience on the screen was cheering. The host was shouting, and the noise became a physical wall between us and the rest of the world. She put the remote down on the coffee table with a deliberate click. Then, she turned to me. "We do not air our dirty laundry on the front porch. Maggie," she said. I opened my mouth to defend myself, to say that I had done no such thing. That was when she moved. She took 2 quick steps, and her hand lashed out. The slap caught me across the left cheek. It was not a clumsy, emotional hit. It was precise. It was hard. My head snapped to the side, and my ear rang with a high-pitched whine that cut through the noise of the television. I stumbled back, my hand flying to my face, my eyes wide with shock. I stared at her. I waited for her to look horrified. I waited for the apology, for the "I do not know what came over me." Instead, Vivian reached up and smoothed a stray hair back into her perfect bun. She looked at me with absolute indifference. Then, she picked up the remote and lowered the volume back to a conversational level. "Go put some ice on that," she said calmly, "and do not come out until the redness is gone." She walked into the kitchen and started chopping vegetables for dinner. That evening, when Martin came home, my cheek was still throbbing. I was ready to tell him. I was ready to pack my bags. But the moment the front door opened, Vivian was there, her eyes swimming with tears. "Oh, Martin," she sniffled, clutching a tissue. "I am just so worried about Maggie." My father dropped his briefcase, instantly on alert. "What happened? Is she okay?" "She is having those spells again," Vivian whispered, loud enough for me to hear from the hallway. "She was running through the house, so manic, and she ran right into the doorframe. I tried to catch her, but she is just so strong when she gets like that. I feel like I'm failing her. Martin." Martin looked at me. He saw the red mark on my face, but through the lens Vivian had carefully polished for him, he did not see a victim of assault. He saw a clumsy, emotionally unstable daughter who was stressing out his saint of a wife. "Maggie," he sighed, the disappointment heavy in his voice. "Please, Vivian is trying so hard. You need to be more careful." The gaslighting was so efficient, so complete, that for a moment I wondered if I had run into the door. That became the pattern. It happened behind closed doors. It happened when the TV was loud. It happened when the vacuum cleaner was running. And it always ended with Vivian composing herself in seconds, while I was left trembling, holding my face or my arm, listening to her spin a story of my clumsiness or my episodes to my father. On my 22nd birthday, a year into this nightmare, Vivian handed me a box with a red bow. We were all in the living room. Sophie was there, clapping her hands. Martin was beaming, happy to see a peaceful family moment. "Open it," Vivian urged, her smile bright and predatory. "I know you have been feeling lonely lately. Maggie, I thought this would help." I opened the box. Inside was a small, trembling ball of orange and white fur. "A kitten," I breathed. "His name is Pumpkin," Vivian said, "because he is sweet, but a little bit dense, just like someone else we know." She laughed lightly, and everyone laughed with her, thinking it was a gentle tease. I lifted the kitten out. He looked up at me with wide, green eyes and let out a tiny, scratchy mew. I held him against my chest, feeling his tiny heart beating against mine. I did not know it then, but Vivian had just handed me the only ally I would ever have. From that day on, Pumpkin was my shadow. Where I went, he went, and because I was trapped in that house, often confined to my room or the kitchen, he saw everything. He was there when I graduated college and got my first job at Nova Shield. I thought having my own income would stop it. I thought becoming a professional, a cybersecurity analyst, would give me the armor I needed. But the dynamics of abuse do not care about your job title. If anything, my success made it worse. The violence shifted from punishment for clumsiness to punishment for ingratitude. I remembered a night when I was 25. I had just received a promotion. I came home, perhaps a little too proud, and mentioned that I might look at apartments closer to the city. Vivian waited until Martin went to the garage to check on the water heater. She walked over to the hallway door and closed it. Click. Pumpkin was sitting on the top of the sofa, watching. "You think you are better than us now?" she asked, her voice low. "You think because you make a little money, you can just abandon the family that saved you?" "I am not abandoning anyone," I said, backing up. "I just want to be closer to work." "You are selfish," she spat. She grabbed my upper arm, her fingers digging into the tender flesh of my bicep. She knew exactly where to grab to leave bruises that could be hidden by sleeves. After everything I sacrificed, I gave up my best years raising another woman's child. And this is how you repay me? She shoved me backward. I tripped over the rug and fell hard onto the floor. Pumpkin hissed, his ears flattening against his skull. He jumped down and ran to me, standing between me and Vivian. His back arched. Vivian looked at the cat and sneered. "Get that beast out of here." Then she looked at me, sprawled on the floor. "Get up. Stop being dramatic. You tripped over the rug. You are so clumsy. Maggie, I worry you will never be able to live on your own." She turned up the stereo system then, blasting classical music to drown out any noise, and went back to arranging flowers in a vase. I lay there on the carpet, staring at the ceiling, tears leaking from the corners of my eyes. Pumpkin nudged my cheek with his wet nose, purring a frantic, rumbled purr. He knew. He always knew. I tried to tell people. Once, just once. I was 26. I met an aunt for coffee, my mother's sister. Ruth. I started to tell her that things at home were difficult, that Vivian was aggressive. Before I could get the full truth out, my phone rang. It was Martin. Vivian had called him, sobbing, claiming I had called her and screamed at her, threatening to cut her out of my life. She had preemptively struck. By the time I tried to explain the bruises to anyone, the narrative was already set. Maggie is stressed. Maggie imagines things. Maggie has a persecution complex because she misses her real mom. I stopped trying to speak. I learned to endure. I learned to wear long sleeves in the summer. I learned to apologize for things I had not done. But Pumpkin never learned to pretend. Every time the door clicked shut, every time the volume on the TV went up, Pumpkin would panic. If he was in the room, he would hiss. If he was locked out, he would throw himself against the door, scratching at the wood, meowing that distinct, low-pitched yowl of distress. "That damn cat," Martin would say, looking up from his newspaper. "He is so loud. He just wants attention," Vivian would say, soothingly. Just ignore him. And they did. They ignored the scratching. They ignored the meowing. They ignored the thuds from the other room. For 10 years, my life was a series of closed doors and hidden bruises. And for 10 years, the only witness to my reality was a cat with orange fur and green eyes, who paced outside the door, desperate to save me, while the rest of the world believed the lie. Now, driving through the snow, 40 minutes away from that house, I thought about the bruise on my arm from 2 weeks ago. I thought about the camera on Pumpkin's collar. I had spent a decade thinking no one saw. I had spent a decade thinking my pain was invisible. But someone had seen, and now, thanks to Sophie's vanity project, the unblinking eye of a camera had seen it too. I pulled into the driveway of my small rental apartment complex. The snow was ankle deep. I turned off the engine. The silence rushed back in. But this time, it did not feel oppressive. It felt like a blank page. I was 33 years old. I was a grown woman. And for the first time since I was 19, I was not going to go back into the house and play the role of the clumsy, grateful daughter. I grabbed my laptop bag from the passenger seat. I left the phone with the unanswered messages sitting there in the dark. I walked up the stairs to my apartment, my boots crunching on the ice. I had a lot of footage to review, and for the first time in my life, I had work to do that did not involve serving Vivian Cole. I had a pattern to uncover. By the time I turned 28, I had secured a position as a lead cybersecurity analyst at Nova Shield. On paper, I was a success story. My annual salary had crossed into the 6-figure range, a sum that should have guaranteed a comfortable, if not luxurious, life in a city like Silverford. I should have been saving for a down payment on a house with a yard. I should have been driving a car that did not shudder when the speedometer hit 60. I should have been buying clothes that were not from the clearance rack at the outlet mall. Instead, I lived in a 400-square-foot studio apartment on the edge of town, where the heating was temperamental and the view was a brick wall. My furniture was a collection of mismatched pieces I had scavenged from thrift stores or curb alerts. My bank account, despite the direct deposits that hit every 2 weeks, remained in a state of perpetual anemia. The reason for this disparity was simple, though it took me years to admit it. I was not just an employee of Nova Shield, I was also the primary unpaid financier of the Elliott family lifestyle. The extraction of my resources was never violent. It was never a demand at gunpoint. It was surgical, persistent, and wrapped in the suffocating cotton wool of family obligation. Vivian Cole was a master of the financial guilt trip. She did not ask for money. She presented problems that only money could solve, and then she waited for me to fill the silence with my credit card. It started small, insidious little nibbles at my paycheck. "Oh, Maggie," she would sigh over the phone on a Tuesday evening. "The roof over the garage has developed a terrible leak. Your father is so stressed about it. He is talking about trying to fix it himself. But you know his back. I am terrified he will fall off the ladder and break his neck." The implication was clear. If Martin fell, it would be because I was too stingy to hire a professional. So, I transferred $2,000 for the roofers. Then it was the credit card debt. "We just had a few unexpected expenses this month," Vivian would say, her voice tight with fabricated worry. "The interest rates are criminal, Maggie, truly criminal. It is keeping your father up at night. I hate to ask, but since you are doing so well at that big tech company..." So, I paid off $4,000 of their debt, telling myself I was buying my father a good night's sleep. Then came the investments in Sophie's future. Sophie was the golden child, the one destined for greatness, and apparently, greatness was expensive. Sophie needs to take these advanced French immersion classes. Vivian told me one afternoon while I was visiting. She was arranging hydrangeas in a crystal vase I had bought them for their anniversary. It is absolutely essential for her law degree. If she wants to work in international law, she needs to be fluent. It is for her career. Maggie, you want your sister to succeed, do you not? "How much is it?" I asked, already reaching for my checkbook. $3,000 for the semester, Vivian said without blinking. "But think of the return on investment." I paid for the French classes. I paid for the tutor. Later, I paid for the networking trip to Paris so Sophie could practice her accent. Meanwhile, I was eating instant noodles 3 nights a week and wearing boots with a hole in the sole. But the money was only half of the equation. The other half was the labor. The invisible, back-breaking labor that Vivian viewed as my rent for existing in their orbit. I became the designated chef for every major event in the Elliott household. Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, Martin's birthday, Vivian's birthday, and eventually, even her social club's fundraising galas. The pattern was always the same. 2 weeks before the event, Vivian would call. "I am just swamped, darling," she would say, "absolutely buried. And you know, nobody makes the glaze for the ham like you do. Could you just handle the menu? I will take care of the decor." Handling the menu meant I would spend hundreds of dollars of my own money on groceries. It meant I would arrive at their house at 6 in the morning on the day of the party. It meant I would spend 12 hours on my feet in the kitchen, chopping, roasting, basting, and baking, sweat sticking my shirt to my back. Vivian would breeze in and out of the kitchen, holding a glass of wine, looking impeccable in silk and cashmere. She would taste a sauce with the tip of a spoon, frown slightly, and say, "Needs more sage," before wandering back out to greet the guests. When dinner was served, the guests would gush. "Vivian, this turkey is divine," a neighbor would exclaim. "Oh, thank you," Vivian would beam, placing a hand on her chest. "I wanted everything to be perfect for you all." Then, almost as an afterthought, she would lean toward me where I stood by the sideboard, usually refilling water glasses because there was no seat for me at the main table. She would whisper, low enough that no one else could hear, "You do not mind, do you? It is just easier this way." She never explicitly claimed she cooked it. She just accepted the praise and let the assumption hang in the air. And I, conditioned to be the shadow, never corrected her. I washed the dishes while they drank coffee and brandy in the living room. I scraped the plates while they laughed. I was the staff. But the staff usually got paid. I paid to work. As the years went on, the requests escalated from small favors to substantial assets. There was the time Vivian decided Sophie needed a pre-wedding fund. Sophie was not engaged. She was not even dating anyone serious at the time. "We need to be prepared," Vivian had argued, cornering me in the kitchen. "When the time comes, we need to be able to put a deposit down on a Vera Wang gown immediately. You know how fast they go. I was thinking $5,000 would be a good start. You can think of it as your gift to your sister." "A gift for a wedding that does not exist?" I asked, my patience fraying. "Do not be jealous, Maggie," Vivian chided, her eyes narrowing. "Just because you are still single does not mean you should punish Sophie." I did not give the full 5,000, but I gave 2. I always gave something. It was the toll I paid to keep the peace. Then there were the appliances. "The oven is not heating evenly. Maggie, how can you expect to cook Thanksgiving dinner in a faulty oven?" So I bought them a top-of-the-line convection oven. Then the vacations. "My nerves are shot," Vivian claimed. "The doctor says I need a retreat. Arizona. Just a week. It is for my health." I paid for the plane tickets. Throughout all of this, Martin, my father, was a ghost in his own life. He had mastered the art of weaponized incompetence. Whenever the topic of money or logistics came up, he would hold up his hands, look at the floor, and recite his favorite mantra. "You know me, Maggie," he would say, shaking his head. "I am no good with numbers. Your mother handles the finances. I just let her steer the ship." He abdicated his role as a father and a protector, handing the reins over to a woman he knew was bleeding his daughter dry. By refusing to look at the bank statements, by refusing to ask where the money for the new patio furniture came from, he made himself innocent in his own eyes. But his silence was the foundation upon which Vivian built her empire. And then there was Sophie. Sophie was not malicious in the way Vivian was. She was not calculating. She was simply breathtakingly oblivious. She had been raised in a bubble where things just appeared. Money appeared, Food appeared, clean laundry appeared, and for the last decade, I had been the magician making it happen. She was in law school now, a prestigious university that cost a fortune. She would come home on breaks, toss her bag on the sofa, and look at me with genuine confusion if I looked tired. "You look exhausted, sis," she would say, munching on an apple I had bought. "You should take a spa day. My friend recommended this place downtown. It is only $300 for a massage." She did not understand that $300 was my grocery budget for the month. She viewed my sacrifices as natural phenomena, like gravity or the sun rising in the east. Of course, Maggie paid for the French lessons. Of course, Maggie cooked the dinner. That was just what Maggie did. Occasionally, the pressure would build too high, and I would try to push back. I would say, "Vivian, I really cannot afford this right now." Or, "I have a deadline. I cannot cook for 40 people this weekend." That was when Vivian would pull out the ultimate weapon. It was a sentence she kept sharpened and ready, a dagger she plunged into my chest whenever I showed a spark of independence. She would look at me, her eyes filling with those practiced, glistening tears, and she would say, "Maggie, have you forgotten? We took you in when your mother died, and you were just a broken little girl. We opened our home. We saved you. We gave you a family when you had nothing. Are you really going to let a little money stand between you and the people who love you?" The guilt was instantaneous and paralyzing. It tapped into the deep, primal fear of abandonment that had lived in me since I was 19. I felt like I owed them my life because they had allowed me to exist in their house. I equated their basic tolerance of my presence with charity. So I would apologize, I would write the check, I would tie on the apron, and the cycle would reset. The only creature who seemed to understand the absurdity of my existence was Pumpkin. He was a middle-aged cat now, a little thicker around the middle, his orange fur finding gray patches around the muzzle. When I stayed over at the house, usually because I had been cooking until 2 in the morning and was too tired to drive home, he would abandon his usual spots and curl up on the foot of my bed in the guest room. He would sleep heavily, pressing his weight against my legs, purring a low, rusty rumble that vibrated through the mattress. It was a comfort, a reminder that I was not entirely alone in this house. But even Pumpkin was utilized by the family. When I was not there, Sophie treated him like a prop. I would see him on her social media, dressed in ridiculous outfits, looking miserable while she posed with a peace sign. "Pumpkin loves his new sweater," the caption would read, while the cat in the photo looked ready to murder someone. She borrowed him for the aesthetic of having a cute pet, just as they borrowed me for the utility of having a live-in servant and ATM. We were both just assets to be deployed for the greater glory of the Elliot image. This loop, work, pay, serve, be guilted, repeat, had become so seamless, so integrated into the fabric of my reality, that I had stopped seeing it as abuse. I saw it as duty. I saw it as the price of admission to the only family I had left. Until this Christmas. Until the moment I sat in my car in the snow, looking at a demand for a smartwatch and a rejection from the dinner table, and realized that after 13 years of paying the toll, the gate was still closed. I had given them a house worth of money and a lifetime of labor, and I was still the girl standing on the porch, begging to be let in. The realization was not a hot flash of anger, it was a cold, hard clarity. I was not their daughter, I was their employee, and I had been working without a contract for far too long. The silence in my apartment was not peaceful. It was heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm. My phone lay on the scratched laminate counter of my kitchenette. Face up, the screen was dark, but the notification light pulsed rhythmically. Blink, 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 a tiny blue heartbeat demanding my attention. I knew what was happening on the other end of that light. The family group chat was likely imploding. Vivian would be moving from passive-aggressive concern to open hostility. Martin would be sending confused, guilt-ridden pleas. Sophie might even be calling, wondering why her big sister was ghosting the most important meal of the year. For 13 years, my neural pathways had been wired to respond to that light like a Pavlovian dog. The urge to pick it up, to type an apology, to rush out into the snow and drive to the grocery store was a physical ache in my chest. It felt like withdrawal. Ignoring them felt more dangerous, more visceral, than any of the slaps Vivian had ever delivered. When she hit me, the pain was sharp but finite. This silence, this deliberate severance of the connection, felt like I was stepping off a cliff in the dark. But I did not pick it up. I forced my hands to stay at my sides. I forced myself to breathe. I turned away from the phone and walked to the small, second-hand desk in the corner of the living room. I woke up my laptop. The screen glowed to life, the cool blue light reflecting in the darkened window. I was a lead analyst for Nova Shield. My job was to look at complex systems, identify vulnerabilities, track malicious activity, and find the pattern in the chaos. I spent my days hunting hackers and patching security leaks for Fortune 500 companies. Yet, for over a decade, I had let the most obvious security breach in history run rampant in my own life. It was time to treat the Elliott family not as my relatives, but as a compromised system. I opened my banking application. My hands were steady now, settling into the familiar rhythm of work. I selected the export data function. I pulled the transaction history for the last 12 months. The spreadsheet populated on the screen, a dense grid of dates, merchants, and amounts. I created a pivot table, filtering the data by recipient and category. I did not look at the individual line items yet. I wanted the aggregate data. I wanted the cold, hard truth of the numbers. I created a category called Family Support. I started dragging items into it. The transfer for the roof repair, $2,000. The payment to the credit card company on Martin's behalf, $4,000. The loan for Sophie's French tutor, $3,000. The plane tickets for Vivian's retreat, $800. The convection oven, $1,200. Then I started adding the smaller things, the things that bled me dry $20 or $50 at a time, the grocery runs where Vivian forgot her wallet, the Uber Eats orders sent to their house when Vivian was too tired to cook, the bottle of vintage wine for Martin's boss, the dry cleaning bills. I scrolled down the list, my eyes scanning the descriptions. Every single one of these transactions had a story attached to it. A story of guilt, a story of, "We saved you," a story of, "Be a good daughter." I moved the cursor to the sum function at the bottom of the column. I pressed enter. The number stared back at me, black text on a white background. $13,452. I sat back in my chair, the breath leaving my lungs in a rush. $13,000 in 1 year. For years, I had told myself I could not afford to buy a house. I had told myself that the market in Silverford was too expensive, that I needed to save more, that I was just not good with money. I lived in this drafty studio, sleeping on a mattress that hurt my back, convinced that poverty was my natural state. But I was not poor. I was being embezzled. That number was a down payment. That number was a new car. That number was a trip to Europe for me, not for Sophie. I stared at the screen, and the feeling of foolishness was so intense it burned. I had been funding their upper-middle-class cosplay while I lived like a college student. They were not struggling. They were siphoning. I minimized the spreadsheet and opened my message history. I synced my phone's backup to the laptop so I would not have to touch the device itself. I opened the thread, Vivian and Maggie. I hit Control F. I started searching for keywords. Search query. Disappointed. 17 matches in the last 6 months. I am so disappointed you could not make it. Your father is very disappointed in your attitude. Do not disappoint us, Maggie. Search query. Help. 42 matches. We need your help. Can you help your sister? Help me with this bill. Search query. Mother, 12 matches. Every single one of them was weaponized. Your mother would be so sad to see you acting like this. We took you in when your mother died. Do it for your mother's memory. I read the texts objectively, stripping away the emotional context of the moment I had received them. When I read them now, in the quiet of my apartment, they did not look like requests from a loving parent. They looked like phishing attempts. They were social engineering scripts designed to bypass my logic centers and trigger a compliance response. If you do not transfer the money by 5 o'clock, the roofers are leaving, and the leak will ruin the antique rug. Urgency, artificial scarcity, fear. Dad is so weak today. His heart cannot take any stress. Please just say yes. Emotional blackmail. Threat of consequences. I opened a new document. I typed the header. Pattern analysis. This was the hardest part. The money was just math. The texts were just words. But the physical violence, that was the data I had repressed the deepest. I forced myself to type. Incident 1, November 23rd, 2014. Living room. Action. Slap to the face. Open palm. Pretext. Allegedly flirting with the neighbor's gardener. Vivian's cover story. I ran into the doorframe due to a manic episode. Incident 2, July 4th, 2016. Kitchen. Action. Shoved backward into the granite island. Bruise on lower spine. Pretext. I burned the apple pie crust. Vivian's cover story. I slipped on a wet floor while rushing. Incident 3, December 25th, 2018. Hallway. Action. Grabbed by the hair. Head yanked back. Pretext. I forgot to buy the specific brand of brandy Martin liked. Vivian's cover story. I was having a panic attack and she was trying to restrain me from hurting myself. I typed for an hour. I listed every grab, every pinch, every slap, every shove. I listed the bruises. I listed the lies. When I looked at the document, it spanned 3 pages. Seeing it all at once, laid out in chronological order, stripped of the confusion and the gaslighting, the conclusion was inescapable. This was not a complicated relationship. This was not family drama. This was a systemic, escalating campaign of physical assault and psychological control. I looked at the timestamps. The incidents were getting closer together. The violence was becoming more casual. The financial demands were increasing in value. In cybersecurity terms, the threat actor was emboldened. They had probed the system, found no defenses, and were now escalating their privileges. I felt a wave of nausea. I stood up and walked to the window. The snow was still falling, covering the world in white. I looked down at the streetlights. I needed verification. I needed a second opinion. My own judgment had been compromised for so long that I did not trust it. I went back to the laptop. I opened a private browsing window. I typed in the URL for the National Domestic Violence Hotline. The website loaded. I stared at the Chat Now button. It looked like a panic button. I hesitated. A voice in my head, Vivian's voice, whispered that I was being dramatic. You are not a battered woman. Maggie, you are a successful analyst. She does not hit you with a fist. She does not put you in the hospital. It is just family stuff. But then I looked at the spreadsheet. $13,000. I looked at the list of bruises. I clicked the button. A chat window popped up, connecting to a live advocate. Hi, the text appeared. I am Sarah. How can I help you today? This chat is confidential and secure. I typed slowly. My fingers felt stiff. Hi. I'm not sure if I should be here. I am 33. My stepmother. She hits me sometimes. Not hard enough to break bones, but enough to leave bruises. And she takes a lot of my money. She tells my father that I am the one who is crazy and that I hurt myself. I waited, my heart hammering against my ribs. I expected Sarah to tell me that this line was for real emergencies, for women whose husbands were threatening them with guns. The 3 dots bubbled on the screen. I am so glad you reached out, Sarah typed. I want you to know that you do not have to have broken bones for it to be abuse. What you are describing, physical aggression, financial exploitation, and gaslighting, making you doubt your reality, is a very common and very serious pattern of domestic violence. Reading those words on the screen was like having a bucket of ice water thrown over me. Abuse, domestic violence. But I am an adult, I typed. I do not live with her. I just go over there to help. Abuse does not stop just because you move out. Sarah replied. It sounds like she uses financial guilt and emotional manipulation to keep you within her reach so she can maintain control. That is called coercive control. It is very effective, and it is not your fault. It is not your fault. I stared at the sentence. I had spent 14 years believing it was my fault, that I was too clumsy, too sensitive, too selfish, too ungrateful. Is it normal for her to make me pay for everything? I asked. I calculated it. I gave them $13,000 this year. Financial abuse is a tactic designed to limit your independence, Sarah explained. By taking your resources, she ensures you cannot easily walk away or feel secure enough to stand up to her. It is a way of keeping you dependent on their approval, even if you are the one earning the money. We chatted for 20 minutes. Sarah did not tell me what to do. She did not order me to call the police. She just validated the data. She confirmed that the pattern I had identified was real. She gave me the vocabulary to name the thing that had been eating my life. Do you have a support system? She asked. I have a cat, I typed. And maybe I can find a therapist. That sounds like a great first step, Sarah said. I closed the chat window. I felt exhausted, but it was a clean exhaustion, not the murky, confused fatigue I usually felt after a weekend at my father's house. I opened a new tab. I went to the portal for my health insurance provided by Nova Shield. I had the Platinum plan. I had incredible coverage. I had never used it for anything other than my annual flu shot and the occasional antibiotic for a sinus infection. I searched for trauma-informed therapists in Silverford. I found a profile for a woman named Dr. Eris. Her bio said she specialized in complex family trauma and narcissistic abuse. I clicked Request Appointment. I filled out the form. For the reason for visit section, I did not write stress or anxiety. I wrote, Adult child of abusive stepmother. Financial and physical abuse. Need help breaking the cycle. I hit Submit. For the first time in 13 years, I was using my high salary and my excellent benefits for myself. I was investing in Maggie Elliott, not in the myth of the happy Elliott family. I closed the laptop. The room was dark now. I stood up and walked into my kitchenette. It was small. The appliances were basic white, not the stainless steel convection oven I had bought for Vivian. The counter was laminate, not granite. But it was mine. I opened the fridge. There was no turkey. There were no 5 pounds of potatoes to peel. There was no cranberry sauce to boil. There was just a carton of eggs, some spinach, and a bottle of white wine I had bought for myself a month ago and never opened. I realized that tomorrow would be Christmas Eve. For the last decade, I would have been at their house right now, sleeping on the uncomfortable guest bed, waking up at 5 in the morning to start the prep work while Vivian slept in until 10. Tomorrow, I would wake up in my own bed. I would make coffee in my own cheap machine. I would drink it while it was hot, without anyone critiquing the roast. I stood there in the silence, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. I was not going to cook a feast for 12 people. I was not going to be the servant. I reached into the fridge and pulled out the wine. I poured a glass. I was alone. I was estranged. My family probably hated me right now. My phone was still blinking with their rage. But as I took a sip of the cold, crisp wine, I realized something else. I was safe. The door was locked, and I had the only key. The silence lasted exactly 7 days. In the world of cybersecurity, we call this the dwell time, the period where an attacker is present in the network but hasn't made their move yet. For 1 week, I went to work. I came home, and I did not answer a single text message. I did not pick up the 43 calls from my father. I did not respond to the 18 guilt-tripping memes Sophie sent me. I was a ghost in my own life, and for the first time, I felt the air entering my lungs without obstruction. But I knew Vivian Cole. I knew that a narcissist denied supply does not just walk away, they escalate. They treat silence not as a boundary, but as a declaration of war. The counterattack began on a Tuesday morning, right in the lobby of Nova Shield. I was on the 4th floor, deep in a code review for a banking client, when the internal line on my desk rang. It was the front desk. Ms. Elliott? The receptionist, a young woman named Chloe, sounded terrified. "There is a woman down here. She says she is your mother. She is making a scene." My stomach dropped through the floor. "What is she doing, Chloe?" "She is crying," Chloe whispered. Loudly. "She is telling everyone that you are having a mental breakdown and that you are suicidal. She is demanding to see you immediately. She said she will not leave until she speaks to your boss." I closed my eyes. The shame was instant and burning. A hot flush that started at my neck and crawled up to my hairline. This was Vivian's nuclear option. She knew my career was the one thing I had built without her, the one fortress she hadn't breached. So, she had come to burn it down. "Do not let her up," I said, my voice shaking before I clamped down on it with professional rigidity. "I am coming down." I took the elevator. The descent took 30 seconds, but it felt like 30 years. When the doors opened, I stepped into the atrium. It was a performance worthy of an Academy Award. Vivian was standing near the security turnstiles, wearing her best fur coat, clutching a handkerchief to her face. She was not just crying, she was wailing. A small crowd of delivery couriers and visiting clients had gathered, watching in awkward horror. "My poor baby!" Vivian shrieked. Spotting me, she threw her arms out. "Maggie! Oh, thank God you are alive. Why won't you answer the phone? We thought you had hurt yourself." She lunged toward me. She wanted the hug. She wanted the visual of the concerned mother embracing the unstable daughter. She wanted to cement the narrative right here, under the corporate fluorescent lights. I stopped 10 feet away from her. I did not raise my hands. I did not step forward. "Vivian," I said. My voice was low, flat, and carried zero emotion. "Stop." "Stop?" She blinked, her eyes wet but her jaw tight. "Maggie, how can you be so cruel? I am here to save you. You told your father you were going to end it all if we didn't give you that money. We are so worried." The lie was breathless in its audacity. She was flipping the script in real time. I was the one extorting them? I saw my boss, the director of operations, walking out of the elevators behind me. Vivian saw him too. She ramped up the volume. The whispers in the lobby grew louder. She attacked her mother? She's unstable? I looked at the security guard, a large man named David whom I greeted every morning. "David," I said calmly, "this person is trespassing and harassing an employee. Please escort her to the private conference room B. Do not let her further into the building." Vivian's mouth fell open. She expected me to crumble. She expected me to cry, to apologize, to drag her out the door to avoid a scene. She did not expect me to treat her like a security threat. "You ungrateful little—" she started, the mask slipping for a fraction of a second. "Now, ma'am," David said, stepping between us. I turned to my boss and the HR representative who had just arrived. I did not apologize. I did not look at the floor. "I apologize for the disruption," I said. "I am currently dealing with an estranged family member who is engaging in a campaign of harassment and extortion. I have documented evidence of this behavior. I would like to speak with HR immediately to place a statement on my file so that this does not impact the company's reputation." 10 minutes later, I was sitting in the HR director's office. I was shaking, but my hands were folded on my lap. I laid it out. Not the emotional sob story, but the facts. "This is an extinction burst," I told them, using a term I had learned in my research. "I cut off financial support 7 days ago. This is the retaliation. She is attempting to damage my professional credibility to force me back into a dependent position." The HR director, a stern woman named Linda, looked at me. Then she looked at the lobby security feed on her monitor, where Vivian was currently screaming at David. "We deal with data here, Maggie," Linda said. "And the data says you have been a top performer for 5 years. We do not let domestic drama dictate our employment decisions. If you need a restraining order, legal has a template you can use. And Maggie, we have an employee assistance program. It is free. Use it." Vivian was escorted out by police when she refused to leave. I watched from the second-floor window as she was placed into a squad car, still sobbing for an audience that was no longer watching. I thought I had won a battle, but by the time I got back to my desk, I realized the war had just shifted fronts. My phone, which I had turned back on, was vibrating so hard it was dancing across the desk. The first blow came from Instagram. Sophie. She had posted a story. It was a photo of Pumpkin, my cat. He was curled up in Vivian's lap, looking small and terrified, his ears flattened. Vivian's hand was resting on his neck, her nails sharp and red. The caption, written in a curly, aesthetic font, read, "Some people forget who really loves them. We are just holding down the fort while others lose their way. Family. First unconditional. Love. It was a masterpiece of passive aggression. To the world, it was a sweet photo. To me, it was a hostage video. She was touching the one living thing I actually loved, reminding me that she had him and I did not. Then came the flying monkeys. My phone lit up with texts from numbers I hadn't heard from in months. First, my Aunt Sarah, Vivian's sister-in-law. Maggie, I just heard from your mother. I cannot believe you would cause a scene at your workplace. After everything that woman has done for you, she raised you like her own. You are being incredibly selfish. Then Cousin Mike, dude, seriously? Aunt Viv is a wreck. She says you pushed her? You need to get your head checked. Pay them back whatever you owe them and apologize. It was a coordinated assault. Vivian had gone home, picked up the phone, and spun a narrative where she was the martyr and I was the monster. She had isolated me. She had turned the entire extended network against me. And then, the final blow, an email from Martin. Subject, please, Maggie. I opened it. It was 2,000 words long. Maggie, it began. I am sitting here watching your mother cry. Her blood pressure is through the roof. The doctor says her heart cannot take this kind of stress. Do you want to be the reason something happens to her? I know you are sensitive. You have always been. Difficult. You hold on to grudges. But to humiliate her at your job? To cut us off? We are your family. We are the only people who will ever truly accept you. You are not thinking clearly. Please, just come home. We can work this out. Just apologize to Vivian, and we can go back to normal. She is willing to forgive you. Forgive me. I stared at the screen. My father, the man who had stood by while she slapped me, the man who had spent my retirement savings on her vacations, was asking me to apologize so she could forgive me. I felt a physical pull in my chest. It was the old reflex, the conditioning. Fix it. Just say sorry. Make the noise stop. If you apologize, they will love you again. I grabbed my bag and left the office. I couldn't breathe in there. I drove straight to Dr. Aris's office. I didn't have an appointment, but her receptionist saw my face and squeezed me in for a 30-minute emergency session. I sat on her couch and hyperventilated. I showed her the texts. I showed her the email. They all think I am crazy, I gasped. Maybe I am. Maybe I did push her. Maybe I am remembering it wrong. Doctor, Aris leaned forward. She was a small woman with eyes like lasers. Maggie, she said, stop. She walked to a whiteboard on the wall. She picked up a marker. What Vivian did at your office? That is called a smear campaign. It is designed to destroy your reputation so you have nowhere to go but back to her. She wrote it down. What your father is doing? That is emotional blackmail and enabling. He is using your fear of his wife's health to control your behavior. She wrote that down too. And what you are feeling right now? That doubt? That is the result of gaslighting. When you are told for a decade that up is down, you get dizzy when you finally stand on level ground. She capped the marker. You are not crazy, she said firmly. You are escaping a cult, and the cult is trying to get its member back. A cult. The word hung in the air. It fit. The leader, Vivian. The enforcer, Martin. The brainwashed recruit, Sophie. And the scapegoat, me. I left the therapist's office as the sun was setting. The snow had turned to gray slush on the roads. I drove back to my dark, cold apartment. I did not buy groceries. I did not cook dinner. I sat on my lumpy second-hand sofa in my coat, shivering slightly. I pulled out my phone. I didn't look at the texts. I didn't look at the email. I opened my photo gallery. I scrolled back 3 years to a video I had taken on a rare, quiet Sunday. In the video, I was lying on the bed in my old room. Pumpkin was curled up in the crook of my arm. He was purring, that deep, rumbly engine sound that vibrated through the phone speaker. In the video, I scratched him behind the ears, and he stretched out a paw, kneading the air, his eyes squeezed shut in pure bliss. I sat there in the dark, watching the loop of the only creature who had ever loved me without conditions. In the video, he was safe. In reality, he was in that house with her. I looked at the empty cushion next to me on the sofa. I imagined him there. I imagined his weight, his warmth. "Hold on, buddy," I whispered to the empty room. "I am not coming back to apologize, but I am coming back for you." My thumb hovered over the block button on Martin's contact. My heart hammered. To block my father was the ultimate sin. It was the final door closing. I took a deep breath. I thought about the lobby. I thought about the lie. I pressed block. Then I pressed block on Vivian. Then Sophie. The phone fell silent. The silence was terrifying. But as I curled up on the sofa, watching the video of my cat one more time, I realized that for the first time in my life, the monster wasn't in the room with me. She was screaming outside, and I had finally locked the door. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, and the blue light of my laptop screen was the only thing keeping the darkness of the apartment at bay. I had blocked their numbers. I had blocked their emails. But the human brain is a traitorous organ, and curiosity is its favorite form of self-sabotage. I could not stop myself from opening a private browsing window, navigating to Instagram, and typing in Sophie's handle. I told myself I was just doing reconnaissance. In my line of work, you never stop monitoring a threat just because you have put up a firewall. You need to know if the threat is evolving. Sophie's profile was a curated museum of a life I had financed but never lived. There were photos of her law school graduation, photos of her ski trips, photos of family dinners where my seat was conspicuously empty. I scrolled past a picture of Vivian holding a glass of champagne, her smile tight and triumphant. Then I saw a new story posted 4 hours ago. I clicked on the circle. The video was chaotic. The camera angle was incredibly low, skimming just inches above the hardwood floor. It swayed rhythmically from side to side, inducing a slight motion sickness. We were rushing down the hallway of the Elliott family home, chasing a dust mote dancing in a beam of sunlight. The caption was written in Sophie's bubbly font. POV. You are our cat spying on everyone. Caleb got Pumpkin this hilarious spy collar. Link in bio. I froze. My finger hovered over the trackpad. I replayed the story. I paused it when the camera movement slowed down. There, reflected in the bottom of a full-length mirror as the cat trotted past, was the device. It was a chunky black nodule attached to Pumpkin's collar, hanging heavy against his orange fur. A tiny, unblinking lens stared out from the center. I leaned in, squinting at the screen. I recognized that logo. It was a stylized paw print with a Wi-Fi signal inside it. My heart did a strange, double-time rhythm against my ribs. 2 years ago, Nova Shield had been contracted to do a security audit for a trendy new startup called Petscope. They made smart pet accessories. I remembered reading the report. The hardware was decent, but their cloud security protocols were laughable. They used simple HTTP for data transmission in the early versions, and their default password requirements were practically non-existent. Sophie's caption said Caleb had set it up. Caleb was Sophie's boyfriend, a sweet but dim-witted personal trainer who thought password 123 was high security. I looked at the link in her bio. It led directly to the public sharing page of the Petscope cloud interface. It asked for a login to view the full gallery. I sat back in my chair, the gears in my mind, usually reserved for tracking Russian botnets or corporate espionage, began to whir with a different purpose. I knew the network architecture of my father's house better than he did. I had set it up, after all. They were still using the same router I had installed 5 years ago. I knew they never changed default settings unless forced to. And I knew their passwords. Vivian was a creature of extreme habit and extreme narcissism. She did not believe in random strings of characters. She believed in memorable dates and names that celebrated her. I opened a new tab and went to the main Petscope login page. Username. I typed in the email address I had created for them a decade ago to handle their utility bills and junk mail. It was the only email address Martin knew how to check. theelliotfamilyhouse@gmail.com. Password. I closed my eyes and pictured the sticky note Martin used to keep taped to the monitor until I yelled at him about security. I tried the obvious one first. Vivian and Martin 2010. Incorrect password. Please try again. I drummed my fingers on the desk. Caleb had set this up. Caleb would have asked Sophie for the Wi-Fi password to connect the device, and then he likely would have used the same password for the account to make it easy for Martin to remember. What was the Wi-Fi password I had set up for them, which Vivian had later made me change because it was too complicated to tell guests? Yes. I typed it in. Vivian is Queen Wa. I hit enter. The screen flickered white, then refreshed. Welcome back, Pumpkin. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. The dashboard loaded, displaying a grid of thumbnails, hundreds of them. Each one was a time-stamped video clip, ranging from 30 seconds to 5 minutes. It was an archive of life seen from 6 inches off the ground. I saw thumbnails of the kitchen floor. I saw a lot of footage of the underside of the dining table. I saw a clip of Martin's slippers shuffling across the carpet. I checked the dates. The camera had been active for 3 weeks. Caleb must have given it to them as an early Christmas gift, or maybe a Thanksgiving novelty. My hands started to shake. I was not looking for cute cat videos. I was looking for a specific date. December 12th, 2 weeks ago, the day of the incident, the day Vivian told the world I had shoved her into the china cabinet. I scrolled down. The interface was clunky, loading slowly. December 14th, December 13th, December 12th. There were 14 clips from that day. I started clicking through them. 10 in the morning, Pumpkin sleeping on the windowsill. 12:30, Pumpkin eating dry food. The sound of crunching was deafeningly loud on the microphone. 2:15 in the afternoon. The timestamp burned into my retinas. That was the time. I remembered because I had looked at the clock on the microwave right before Vivian started screaming. I clicked play. The video opened. The view was shaky, swaying side to side as Pumpkin walked down the hallway. The audio was muffled at first, just the sound of paws on the runner rug. Then, voices. Selfish little bitch. Vivian's voice cut through the static, clear and sharp. My stomach turned over. On the screen, the camera view shifted as Pumpkin turned his head. He was approaching the living room. The door was ajar. Just a crack. Maybe 4 inches. But for a cat, that was an open invitation. Pumpkin squeezed through the gap. The camera scrapped against the wood, then popped through into the room. The angle was perfect. Pumpkin had stopped just inside the door, sitting down to watch the humans. In the center of the frame, from the knees up, was me. I was wearing my blue sweater. I looked terrified. I was backing away. And there was Vivian. She was advancing on me. Her face was twisted in a snarl that she never showed in public. I am not abandoning anyone, my recorded voice said, sounding thin and scared. I just want to be closer to work. You are selfish, Vivian spat. I watched, my hand clamped over my mouth, as the digital evidence played out. Vivian lunged. It was fast, but the camera caught it. She grabbed my arm. I saw her fingers dig into my bicep, the exact spot where the bruise had formed. She yanked me. I stumbled. After everything I sacrificed? She screamed. Then, the shove. She pushed me hard with both hands. I watched myself fall. I hit the floor and slid out of the frame. Pumpkin hissed. The audio picked it up. A sharp, guttural sound. But the video did not stop there. This was the part I had not seen. This was the part I had been on the floor for. Vivian stood over where I had fallen. She looked down, her chest heaving. Then, she looked toward the kitchen door, calculating. She took a deep breath. She turned toward the heavy oak china cabinet on her left. She did not stumble. She did not trip. She threw herself. It was a deliberate, athletic motion. She slammed her own hip and shoulder into the sharp corner of the cabinet. The thud was sickeningly loud. She bounced off the wood, crying out in pain, real pain this time, and then she let her legs buckle. She crumpled to the floor, arranging herself in a heap. She reached up and messed up her hair. She pulled her blouse askew. Then, she opened her mouth and let out that blood-curdling scream. "Martin! Martin! Help! She is hurting me!" The video ended. I sat in the silence of my apartment, the only sound the hum of the refrigerator. I played it again. The shove, the fall, the self-inflicted impact, the staging, the lie. I played it a third time. I was shaking, but it was not from fear. It was a violent, vibrating frequency of pure vindication. For 14 years, she had made me question my own eyes. She had made me question my memory. She had convinced my father, my sister, my relatives, and half of my brain that I was clumsy, violent, and unstable. She had gaslighted me so effectively that even with the bruise on my arm, a small part of me had wondered if maybe I had pushed her in a fugue state. But the camera did not hallucinate. The camera did not have a motive. The camera did not owe Vivian anything. I downloaded the video. I saved it to my desktop. Then I saved it to an encrypted folder. Then I uploaded it to a secure cloud server that had nothing to do with Petscope. Then I put it on a USB drive. I went back to the Petscope interface. I found every other clip where she had raised her voice. I found a clip from a month ago where she was talking on the phone to her friend, laughing about how she got me to pay for the roof. "Oh, I just told her Martin was stressed," she had said, walking past Pumpkin while holding a glass of wine. "She opens her wallet the moment I mention his heart. It is so easy." I downloaded that one too. I downloaded everything. By the time the sun started to turn the sky gray outside my window, I had a digital dossier that could not just ruin her reputation. It could put her in prison, assault, extortion, fraud. I looked at the last frame of the video, paused on Vivian's face right before she started screaming. She looked monstrous. I picked up my phone. I looked at the block list. I did not unblock them, not yet. I went to my contacts and found the number for Elena Price, the lawyer the domestic violence hotline had recommended. I sent a text, even though it was 5 a.m. "I have the evidence. I have everything. When can we meet?" Then, I looked at the picture of Pumpkin on my lock screen. "Good boy," I whispered. "You are the best boy." Sophie thought she was posting a cute vlog of her cat. She thought she was showing off a gadget her boyfriend bought. She had no idea she had just handed me the key to my cell. Vivian had built a fortress of lies, fortified by my silence and my father's blindness. She thought she was untouchable behind those closed doors. But she forgot one thing. Cats can fit through the smallest cracks, and this cat had brought the daylight with him. I closed the laptop. I stood up and walked to the window. The snow had stopped falling. The sky was clear and cold. I was not the victim anymore. I was the witness, and I was about to take the stand. I did not sleep that night. Sleep felt like a liability, a vulnerability I could no longer afford. Instead, I engaged the protocols that Nova Shield had drilled into me for handling compromised high-value assets. Only this time, the asset was my own life. I treated the data from the Petscope cloud with the same paranoia I would apply to state-sponsored malware. I downloaded every single video file, one by one, ensuring the metadata remained intact. I did not trust the cloud, not theirs, and not mine. I transferred the files onto an external hard drive, which I then encrypted with a 24-character key. I created a secondary backup on a secure air-gapped server I maintained for sensitive work projects. Finally, I copied the most damning clips onto a physical USB drive. I walked into my bedroom closet, pulled down a shoebox from the top shelf, and opened my small, fireproof biometric safe. I placed the USB drive inside, right next to my birth certificate and my passport. The heavy clunk of the safe locking gave me a fleeting sense of control. If my apartment burned down, if my laptop was stolen, if Vivian somehow guessed my passwords, the truth would still survive in that steel box. But the work was not done. I went back to the laptop. I had found the smoking gun, the staged fall. But in my line of work, you do not just look for the exploit. You look for the lateral movement. You look for what else the attacker has been doing while they had access. I pulled up the folder of downloaded videos and started watching them in chronological order. I forced myself to detach, to view the woman on the screen not as the mother figure who had tormented me, but as a subject of surveillance. The footage was a catalog of madness masked as domesticity. There was a clip from November 4th. The camera was swaying gently. Pumpkin must have been walking into the kitchen hoping for food. Vivian was standing at the counter, her back to the door, talking on her cell phone. Her voice was low, venomous. "I do not care if she says she is broke." Vivian was hissing into the receiver. "She has money for that ridiculous car. She has money for us. You just have to squeeze her. Martin, tell her you are having chest pains. You know she panics when you talk about your heart." Then, the sound of the garage door opening echoed in the background. My father was home. The transformation was instantaneous. It was terrifying to watch in high definition. In less than 2 seconds, Vivian's posture softened. She dropped the phone to the counter, pasted a weary, gentle smile onto her face, and turned around. "Martin, darling," she cooed as my father walked into the frame, looking tired and slumped. "I was just telling my sister how worried I am about you. You look exhausted. Come, sit down. Let me make you a tea." My father kissed her cheek, looking at her with adoring, grateful eyes. He had no idea that 3 seconds prior, she had been coaching him on how to manipulate me. I shivered in my warm apartment. It was one thing to suspect she was two-faced. It was another to see the mask click into place with mechanical precision. But the next clip was worse. It was dated December 10th, 2 days before the assault. The camera was stationary this time. Pumpkin must have been sitting on the vanity table in the master bedroom. The angle was looking up, capturing Vivian standing in front of the large, gilt-framed mirror. She was not applying makeup. She was practicing. She stared at her reflection, her face neutral. Then, she squeezed her eyes shut. She scrunched up her forehead. She opened her mouth slightly, quivering her bottom lip. She let out a small, broken whimper. She opened one eye, checked the mirror, and shook her head. She did not like it. It was not convincing enough. She reset. She tried again. This time, she thought of something. I did not know what. And tears actually sprang to her eyes. She let one roll down her cheek. She touched her hand to her chest, looking fragile, looking devastated. He just fell," she whispered to the mirror, testing the line. Then she changed it. "She just pushed me. I tried to hold her back." She nodded at her reflection. She wiped the tear away with a tissue, checked her mascara, and walked out of the frame. I felt bile rise in my throat. The crying fits, the hysteria, the "I can't take this anymore" breakdowns that had punctuated my childhood. They were all rehearsals. She was an actress, and we were the captive audience. I kept clicking. I needed to see how deep the rot went. I found a video from 3 weeks ago. Pumpkin was lying on the armchair in the hallway, the camera facing the small console table where everyone dropped their keys and wallets when they entered the house. I saw my own purse sitting there. I recognized it. The brown leather tote I took to work. I must have been in the bathroom or helping Martin in the garage. Vivian walked into the frame. She looked over her shoulder to ensure the coast was clear. Then, she opened my purse. Her movements were quick and practiced. She pulled out my wallet. She flipped it open. She bypassed the cash. She bypassed the credit cards. She pulled out my health insurance card and my driver's license. She took her phone out of her pocket and snapped a clear photo of the front and back of both cards. Then she slid them back into their slots, closed the wallet, and walked away. I froze the video. I stared at the image of her hand holding my identity. Why did she need my insurance card? Why did she need my license? She wasn't stealing my money directly. She did that to my face. This was different. This was administrative. This was bureaucratic. I closed the laptop. The sun was fully up now, casting long, sharp shadows across my floor. I felt a cold dread that had nothing to do with physical pain. This was not just about a toxic stepmother. This was about a calculated dismantling of my life. I grabbed my phone and called Dr. Aris's office. I begged the receptionist for a slot. Any slot. She heard the panic in my voice and gave me a cancellation at 10 in the morning. When I sat in Dr. Aris's office, I did not talk. I simply opened my laptop and played the video of the mirror. Then I played the video of the wallet. Dr. Aris watched in silence. Her professional mask did not slip, but her eyes grew hard. When the videos ended, she closed the laptop lid herself. "Maggie," she said, and her voice was different. It wasn't the gentle, probing tone of a therapist. It was the sharp, urgent tone of a triage doctor. "We are moving past the scope of talk therapy. This woman is weaponizing the legal and medical systems against you. You are in danger." "I know," I whispered. "You need a lawyer," she said. "Not a family lawyer who mediates divorces. You need a shark. You need someone who understands coercive control and financial fraud." She wrote a name on a piece of paper, Elena Price. "She is expensive," Dr. Aris said, "but you have a savings account now that you have stopped paying for their lifestyle. Spend it on this." I called Elena Price from the parking lot. Her assistant tried to schedule me for 2 weeks out. I said, "I have video evidence of a staged assault and identity theft involving a high-net-worth estate." I got an appointment for 2 o'clock that afternoon. Elena Price's office was in a glass and steel tower in downtown Silverford, miles away from the cozy, carpeted offices of family mediators. The conference room smelled of lemon polish and intimidation. Elena herself was a striking woman in her 50s, wearing a suit that cost more than my car, with gray hair cut in a sharp bob that looked like it could cut glass. She sat at the head of the long mahogany table. I sat on the side, clutching my USB drive like a talisman. "Tell me," she said. No small talk. No, "How are you?" I told her everything. I told her about the money. I told her about the bruises. I told her about the shove. And then, with a trembling hand, I plugged the USB drive into her laptop. "You need to see this," I said. "My sister's boyfriend put a camera on the cat." Elena raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "A cat cam?" "Just watch." I played the videos. I played the hallway assault. I played the mirror rehearsal. I played the wallet theft. Elena Price watched them all. She leaned in closer to the screen. She replayed the moment Vivian threw herself into the cabinet 3 times. When she finally leaned back, the skepticism was gone. In its place was a look of pure, predatory focus. "In 30 years of practice," Elena said, her voice low with awe, "I have never seen a smoking gun quite this literal. Usually, these cases are, he said, she said, we rely on character witnesses and medical records. But this?" She tapped the screen. "This is a documentary of a crime in progress. This cat is the witness we never thought to look for." She opened a folder on her desk. She had already done a preliminary background check on my family before I arrived. She was that kind of lawyer. "While you were showing me that," she said, sliding a document across the polished table, "I want to show you what I found this morning. These are public filings at the county clerk's office." I looked at the paper. It was a petition for power of attorney. "Your stepmother filed this 3 days ago," Elena explained. "She is petitioning for full, durable power of attorney over your father, Martin Elliott. If granted, she would have total control over his assets, his medical decisions, and his estate. Crucially, the language specifically excludes you as a secondary agent, citing estrangement and instability." My mouth went dry. "She is taking everything." "She is securing the bag," Elena corrected. "But that is not the worst part. My paralegal found a docket entry in the civil court system. It has not been served to you yet, probably because of the holiday delay." She slid a second piece of paper across. Vivian Cole v. Margaret Elliott. Complaint: civil assault, battery, and elder abuse. Elder abuse? I choked out. She is 55. She does Pilates. In Colorado, the definition can be broad depending on vulnerability, Elena said rapidly. But the label elder abuse is strategic. It carries triple damages. It destroys reputations. If she wins a judgment against you for assaulting a senior family member, you will lose your security clearance at Nova Shield. You will lose your job. You will be unhireable in your field. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the table. This was not just about getting me to cook Christmas dinner. This was an annihilation strategy. Vivian knew I had pulled away. She knew the money train had stopped. So, she had decided to destroy the source of the money and seize control of my father's assets before I could intervene. She was going to frame me for a crime I did not commit to invalidate me as a threat, and then she was going to loot the estate. The photo of my insurance card made sense now. She needed my details to fill out the opposing party information on the forms, to make sure the lawsuit hit me with maximum precision. She wants to ruin me, I said, the realization settling in my gut like lead. She wants to erase you, Elena said. She wants to make sure that if you ever speak up about the abuse, no one will believe you because you are the violent daughter who beat up her poor stepmother. It is a preemptive strike. Elena stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city skyline. We have two options, Maggie, she said, turning back to me. Option 1. We fight this quietly. We show her lawyer the videos privately. We force a settlement where she drops the suit, and you walk away. You never see them again. But she keeps her reputation, and your father stays in the dark. She paused. Option 2. We go nuclear. We do not just defend. We prosecute. We file a countersuit for defamation, malicious prosecution, and assault. And we use the family mediation she requested as the venue to drop the bomb. We show these videos not just to her lawyer, but to your father, to your sister. We blow the doors off the house. I sat there, the hum of the building's HVAC system filling the silence. I thought about Martin. I thought about how he had looked at me with disappointment for 13 years, believing I was the broken one. I thought about Sophie, posting that photo of Pumpkin, thinking her mother was a saint. If I chose option 1, I would be safe. I could move to another city. I could start over. But Martin would stay with her. She would drain him dry. She would isolate him until he died, and he would die thinking I had abandoned him. If I chose option 2, I would break his heart. I would show him that his entire marriage was a lie. I would shatter Sophie's world. It would be cruel, but it would be the truth. I looked at the USB drive sitting on the table, the little black stick that held the ghost of my trauma. The cat brought me the truth, I said quietly. It would be disrespectful to hide it. Elena Price smiled. It was a sharp, dangerous smile. So, we are doing this? We are doing this, I said. I am done protecting them from the consequences of their own actions. Elena sat back down and opened her laptop. Good, because she has scheduled a family intervention mediation for next Tuesday. She thinks she is going to bully you into signing a settlement. She has no idea she's walking into an ambush. One question, I said. Can we subpoena the cat? Elena laughed, a dry barking sound. No, but we can certainly bring the footage. And Maggie, when this is over, you are going to need a very good lock on your door. I know, I said. But for the first time in my life, I am not the one who should be afraid. I walked out of the office into the cold winter air. The wind bit at my face, but I did not button my coat. I felt hot with adrenaline. The game had changed. Vivian was playing checkers with lawsuits and lies. I was playing chess, and I had a queen she did not know existed. I took out my phone and looked at the date, December 27th. The new year was coming, and for the Elliott family, it was going to come in with a bang. The strategy meeting in Elena Price's office felt less like a legal consultation and more like the planning phase of a military coup. Elena sat behind her desk, her fingers flying across her keyboard as she drafted the letter that would serve as the bait. I stood by the window, looking out at the snow-covered streets of Silverford, feeling a strange calmness settling over me. It was the calm of a person who has checked the structural integrity of the bridge and knows exactly when it is going to collapse. Elena stopped typing and swiveled her chair around. "Listen to this tone, Maggie," she said, her eyes gleaming with sharp intelligence. "We are not sending a cease and desist. We are not filing the countersuit yet. We are sending an invitation." She read from the screen, "Dear Ms. Cole, in the interest of preserving family unity and resolving these sensitive matters with discretion, my client proposes a private mediation session. We believe that a face-to-lawyer discussion regarding the allegations of elder abuse and the financial disputes would be more beneficial than a public court battle. We are prepared to discuss a settlement regarding the separation of assets and future contact." I frowned. It sounds like I am surrendering. It sounds like I'm scared of her lawsuit. "Exactly," Elena said, pressing the print button. "That is the trap. Narcissists do not want peace. They want victory. If we came at her with guns blazing right now, she might retreat, hide the assets, or play the victim even harder. But if she thinks you are weak, if she thinks you are coming to the table to beg for a settlement because you are terrified of her elder abuse claim, she will come running. She will want to see you squirm. She will bring your father to witness your humiliation." Elena was right. 2 hours after the courier delivered the letter to the Elliott household, Elena's phone rang. It was Vivian's lawyer. They accepted the mediation. They wanted it to happen as soon as possible. Next Tuesday. "She is eager," Elena noted, hanging up the phone. "She thinks she is coming to accept your surrender. She has no idea she is walking into an ambush." While we prepared the trap, Vivian was busy scorching the earth. The smear campaign escalated from a few whispers to a full-volume broadcast, because I had blocked them on everything. I did not see the messages directly, but the blast radius of her lies was wide enough to reach me through secondary channels. My cousin Mike, who I had helped get a job 2 years ago, sent a LinkedIn message. "I heard you threatened Aunt Viv. Seriously? After she paid for your college? You need to get help. Maggie, you are acting psychotic." She had told them she paid for my college. I had paid for my college with student loans I was still servicing, while she bought designer handbags. Then came the call from Mrs. Higgins, the neighbor. She left a voicemail on my work line, her voice trembling. "Maggie, dear, Vivian told me you are on drugs and that you are extorting them. I just want you to know I am praying for your soul." It took every ounce of my willpower not to scream. It took everything I had not to log onto Facebook and post the bank statements, the screenshots, the truth. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to scream that I was the victim, not the villain. But Elena had been clear. Silence is your weapon right now. Let her talk. Let her scream. The more she talks, the more she commits to a version of events that we can disprove. If you argue, you look defensive. If you stay silent, you look stable. So I held the line. I told my boss and 2 close friends simply, "I am handling a severe legal matter involving domestic violence and financial fraud. I have legal representation. I cannot discuss the details. But please know that the rumors are a retaliation tactic." They believed me. That was the first shock. People who actually knew me, who saw my work ethic, my quiet demeanor, my stability, did not buy Vivian's sudden story that I was a drug-addicted maniac. The truth has a resonance that lies lack. But there was one person whose belief mattered more than anyone else's, my father. Martin was the linchpin. Vivian needed him to be on her side to win the elder abuse case, and she needed his signature for the power of attorney. She was currently isolating him, whispering poison in his ear 24 hours a day. "We need to create a crack in the dam," Elena said on Thursday morning. "We cannot show him everything yet. We saved the heavy artillery for the mediation, but we need to make him doubt her just enough that he shows up to that meeting with his eyes open." She opened a secure email client. She attached a single video file. It was not the video of the staged fall. It was shorter, just 4 seconds. It was a clip from 6 months ago. taken from the kitchen floor angle. In the clip, I was standing by the sink, washing dishes. Vivian walked up behind me. I did not see her coming. She reached out and slapped the back of my head. Hard. "You missed a spot, you stupid girl," she hissed in the video. I flinched and dropped a plate. "Look what you made me do!" Vivian screamed, instantly shifting the blame. Elena typed the subject line. Regarding the incident, no text in the body, just the attachment. She sent it to Martin's personal email address, the one only he had the password for, the one he checked on his phone while hiding in the bathroom. "It is sent," Elena said. "Now we wait." I could only imagine the scene. Martin, sitting in the house he thought he controlled, opening an email from an anonymous sender. Seeing his wife, his gentle, fragile wife, strike his adult daughter from behind with the casual cruelty of a prison warden. He had spent 13 years telling himself that Vivian was the peacemaker and I was the problem. He had told himself that I was clumsy, that I provoked her. But a video does not have context, it just has action, and the action was undeniable abuse. That night, according to the timestamp on the read receipt, Martin opened the email at 3 a.m. He watched it 5 times. The cracks were starting to form. While Martin was stewing in his doubt, I went to gather my own reinforcements. I met my Aunt Ruth at a diner on the edge of town. I had not seen her in 7 years. Vivian had slowly engineered a rift between us, telling me Ruth didn't care about me, and telling Ruth I was too busy to see her. Ruth was older now, her face lined, but she had my mother's eyes. When I walked into the booth, she stood up and hugged me so hard I almost lost my balance. "Maggie," she breathed, holding my face. "I heard the rumors. Vivian called me. She said you went crazy." "I am not crazy. Aunt Ruth," I said, my voice steady. "I am finally fighting back." I sat down and told her everything. I told her about the debt. I told her about the accidents. I did not show her the videos. Elena advised against circulating them, but I told her they existed. Ruth listened, tearing a paper napkin into tiny shreds. When I finished, she slammed her hand down on the table. "I knew it," she said, her voice shaking with rage. "I knew that woman was a snake, Maggie. Do you know why your father stopped talking to us after your mother died?" "Vivian said you guys were overwhelming him," I said. "That you were asking for money." Ruth laughed, a bitter, sharp sound. "Asking for money? Honey, we offered to pay for your college fund. We wanted to set up a trust with your mother's life insurance. Vivian told Martin that we were trying to buy you. She told him we were planning to sue for custody to take you away from him. She played on his insecurity. She made him think he was going to lose his daughter if he didn't cut us off." I felt a cold chill. The isolation started way back then. It wasn't just about money. It was about ownership. "She deleted the voicemails you left me on my birthday, didn't she?" I asked, the realization hitting me. "Every year," Ruth said. "I sent cards. I sent gifts. I assume you never saw them." "Never," I whispered. "She wanted you all to herself," Ruth said, "so she could use you as a punching bag and a servant. And Martin, that fool let it happen because he was too weak to be a single father." I reached across the table and took Ruth's hand. "I have a lawyer. We are having a mediation on Tuesday. I need you there. Not just for support. I need you to tell them what you just told me. I need you to establish the pattern." Ruth squeezed my hand back. "I will be there with bells on. I have been waiting 15 years to tell Vivian Cole exactly what I think of her." The team was assembling. I had the shark lawyer. I had the witness from the past. I had the digital evidence. But there was one member of the team missing. On Saturday night, 2 days before the mediation, there was a knock on my apartment door. I froze. I checked the peephole. It was Martin. My father looked 10 years older than he had last week. His skin was gray, his eyes rimmed with red. He was wearing his old coat, and he was holding a plastic pet carrier. I opened the door, leaving the security chain on. "What do you want?" I asked through the crack. Martin flinched at the harshness of my tone. He looked down at the carrier in his hand. The house is being painted," He stammered. It was a terrible lie. It was 20 degrees outside. Nobody was painting houses. The fumes. Vivian said they are toxic. She wanted to put him in a kennel. He lifted the carrier. Inside, Pumpkin let out a soft meow. I know you like him, Martin said, his voice cracking. I did not want him in a cage. I thought, maybe you could watch him for a while. I looked at my father. I looked for the anger he had expressed in his emails. It was gone. In its place was a profound, terrifying confusion. He had seen the video. I knew it. He had seen his wife slap me. And now he was standing here, unable to articulate the horror growing in his mind, trying to do the one safe thing he could think of, save the cat. Pass him through, I said. I undid the chain. Martin handed the heavy carrier to me. Our hands brushed. His skin was ice cold. Maggie, he said. He looked at me, really looked at me, searching my face for the bruises he had ignored for a decade. Are you eating enough? I am fine, Dad, I said coldly. I am better than I have ever been. He nodded, swallowing hard. Okay, good. That is good. He lingered for a second, as if he wanted to say something else, as if he wanted to ask about the video, but the cowardice that had defined his parenting for 13 years held his tongue. He turned and walked back down the hallway, his shoulders hunched against the weight of his own denial. I locked the door. I engaged the deadbolt. I carried the crate into the living room and opened the door. Pumpkin shot out, tail high, chirping with happiness. He rubbed against my legs, purring instantly. He was home. I picked him up and buried my face in his fur. He smelled like Vivian's perfume, but beneath that, he smelled like my cat. I ran my fingers over his neck. The collar was still there. The camera was still attached. Martin had brought the Trojan horse right into my fortress, thinking he was doing a favor. He had no idea that he had just returned the weapon that would end his marriage. I sat on the floor, holding the cat, and looked at the black lens of the camera. You did good, Pumpkin, I whispered. You did so good. The board was set. Vivian thought she was walking into a victory lap on Tuesday. She thought she was going to browbeat me into a settlement and strip my father of his autonomy. She did not know that sitting in my living room, backed by a high-powered attorney, an estranged aunt, and a database of incriminating footage, was a daughter who was done being a victim. I was ready. The silence was over. It was time to make some noise. The mediation took place in a sterile, glass-walled conference room in downtown Silverford, neutral ground that felt more like an operating theater than a place for healing. The air conditioning was set to a temperature that made everyone keep their coats on, but I was sweating cold, nervous perspiration beneath my blouse. On one side of the long mahogany table sat the Elliott family. Martin, looking gray and shrunken in his suit. Sophie, scrolling nervously on her phone with a defiant set to her jaw. And Vivian Cole was dressed for a funeral, wearing modest black wool and a neck brace that I knew for a fact she had bought at a pharmacy 2 days ago. Beside her sat her lawyer, a sharp-faced man named Mr. Sterling, who looked like he billed by the second. On the other side sat me, my Aunt Ruth, and Elena Price. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. Martin would not meet my eyes. He kept staring at his hands, which were clasped tightly on the table. He had seen the short clip Elena sent him, the slap to the back of my head, but he hadn't spoken a word to me since he dropped the cat off. He was a man suspended between two realities, and I was about to cut the rope. Mr. Sterling opened the proceedings. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. We are here to address the serious breakdown of this family unit, he said, his voice smooth and condescending. My client, Mrs. Cole, has been the victim of sustained emotional and physical abuse at the hands of her stepdaughter. We are looking to settle this quietly to protect Mr. Elliott's reputation, but make no mistake, we are prepared to file charges. Vivian let out a small, trembling sigh. She reached out and gripped Martin's hand. He flinched, just barely, but he didn't pull away. I never wanted this, Vivian said, her voice wavering perfectly. She looked at me with eyes that brimmed with practiced tears. Maggie, I have loved you like my own flesh and blood for 14 years. I cooked for you. I cleaned for you. I welcomed you back when you failed to launch. And how do you repay me? You shove me? You bruise my shoulder so badly I can barely lift my arm? She gestured to her neck brace. My doctor says the trauma to my cervical spine could be permanent. And my heart. Martin knows how weak my heart is. You are trying to kill me. Maggie, you are trying to stress me into a grave so you can take your father's money. Sophie looked up from her phone, glaring at me. Seriously, Maggie? Look at her. She is shaking. We are prepared to offer a settlement. Mr. Sterling interrupted, sliding a document across the table. Margaret Elliott will sign a binding agreement to cease all contact with Martin Elliott and Vivian Cole. She will withdraw all claims regarding financial reimbursement. She will publicly apologize for the assault. In exchange, Mrs. Cole will generously agree not to press criminal charges for elder abuse. I looked at the document. It was not a settlement. It was a restraining order wrapped in a confession. It was designed to isolate Martin permanently, leaving him alone with the woman who was draining his life savings. Elena picked up the paper, read it for 3 seconds, and then dropped it back onto the table as if it were contaminated. No, Elena said. Mr. Sterling smirked. I suggest you take it. The alternative is a courtroom where I will paint your client as a violent, unstable woman who attacks the elderly. I placed a hand on Elena's arm, signaling her to wait. I took a deep breath. I looked at Martin. He was still looking at his hands. I do not want to sign anything, I said, my voice steady, though my heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I just want to watch a movie. Vivian frowned, her sorrowful mask slipping for a fraction of a second. What? We have a witness, I said. A witness who was in the house on December 12th. A witness who has been in the house for weeks. A witness who does not take sides and does not need money. Sophie rolled her eyes. Oh my God. Who? The ghost of Christmas past? No, I said, looking directly at my sister. Pumpkin. Sophie froze, her mouth opened slightly. The connection fired in her brain. The collar. The vlog. The spy camera she had laughed about on Instagram. Elena opened her laptop and connected it to the large monitor at the end of the room. What is this? Mr. Sterling demanded. If this is some sort of unauthorized recording. It is footage from a cloud server owned by Petscope, Elena said calmly. The account was set up by your daughter, Sophie Elliott. The camera was placed on the family cat by her boyfriend. There is no expectation of privacy in common areas of a home where the device was installed by a resident. Would you like to see what the cat saw? Before they could object, Elena hit the spacebar. The huge screen lit up. The angle was low, swaying side to side. The audio was crisp. We were in the hallway of the Elliott house. Vivian's voice filled the conference room, sharp and hateful. Selfish little bitch. On the screen, Pumpkin squeezed through the living room door. The camera stabilized. There was me, on the screen, looking terrified. And there was Vivian, looking like a predator. I am not abandoning anyone, the recording of me said. You are selfish, the recording of Vivian screamed. Martin's head snapped up. He looked at the screen. He saw his wife's face. Not the tearful, fragile face sitting next to him, but a face twisted with rage. We watched the grab. We watched the shove. We watched me fall. And then came the moment of truth. On the screen, Vivian stood over my fallen body. She breathed heavy. She checked the door. Then, with the athleticism of a linebacker, she threw herself sideways. Thud. The sound of her body hitting the china cabinet echoed in the silent conference room. Martin! The video Vivian shrieked, instantly switching into the victim voice. Help! She is hurting me! Elena paused the video on the frame where Vivian was midair, launching herself at the furniture. The silence in the room was absolute. It was a vacuum. Vivian's face had drained of all color. She looked like a wax figure. Her mouth worked, opening and closing, but no sound came out. This, Vivian stammered, her voice an octave higher than usual. "This is fake. This is AI. They made this up. You can do anything with computers now." Mr. Sterling looked at his client, and I saw the moment he realized he had not been paid enough for this. He closed his folder. "It is not AI," Elena said, her voice cutting like a scalpel. "We have the metadata. We have the raw files certified by Petscope. We have the chain of custody. And we have 14 other clips." "14?" Sophie whispered. She was staring at the screen, her hands trembling. "Would you like to see the rehearsal?" Elena asked. She didn't wait for an answer. She clicked the next file. The screen changed. It was the bedroom mirror. Vivian stood there. She looked at herself. She frowned. Then, she squeezed her eyes shut. She forced a sob. She checked the mirror. She adjusted her hair to look more disheveled. She practiced the line. "She just pushed me." Martin made a sound. It was a low, wounded noise, like an animal that had been kicked in the stomach. He pushed his chair back from the table. The screech of the chair legs on the floor was violent. He looked at Vivian. "You practiced?" Vivian reached for him. "Martin, baby, no, it is out of context. I was upset." Martin pulled his arm away as if she were burning hot. "You threw yourself into the cabinet. I held ice to your shoulder for 3 days. You told me she attacked you. I wrote my daughter an email telling her she was dead to me because you told me she attacked you." "She is brainwashing you!" Vivian screamed, pointing at me. The weak heart act was gone. The neck brace was forgotten. She turned her head sharply, fully mobile. "She has always been jealous of us. She wants to destroy our happiness." "There is no happiness, Vivian," a new voice spoke up. Aunt Ruth stood. She had been quiet until now, a silent observer in the corner. She walked to the table and placed a stack of old greeting cards on the mahogany surface. "Martin," Ruth said, her voice shaking with repressed anger. "Do you recognize these?" Martin looked at the stack. "No." "These are the birthday cards I sent Maggie for the last 10 years, Ruth said. "Every check I sent, every letter, they were returned to sender, or they just vanished. Vivian told you I didn't care. She told you my side of the family was greedy." Ruth turned to Vivian. "You cut him off from everyone who loved him, so you would be the only voice in his ear. You isolated him. You isolated Maggie. That is not love, Vivian. That is a siege." Vivian stood up. "I am not listening to this. Mr. Sterling, make them stop." Mr. Sterling did not move. He looked at the screen, where the video of Vivian stealing my identity, the wallet clip, was now queued up. "Mrs. Cole," the lawyer said coldly, "if that video shows you photographing her identification documents, we are moving from civil liability to criminal fraud. I cannot defend you against video evidence of a felony committed in your own home." Sophie stood up then. She walked over to the screen. She looked at the pause button, at the logo of the app she had installed on her boyfriend's phone. "I posted a picture of him," Sophie whispered, horror dawning on her face. "I posted a picture of Pumpkin with you. I captioned it, 'Real Love,' and he was wearing the camera. He was recording you the whole time." She turned to her mother. "You used me. You made me hate my sister. You made me think she was the monster." "She is a monster!" Vivian shrieked, losing all control now. "Look at her, sitting there so smug. She thinks she is better than us because she has a job? Because she has money? I raised her. I sacrificed my life for her." "You sacrificed nothing," I said. I spoke quietly, but in the acoustic perfection of the room, it sounded like a shout. I stood up. I didn't look at Vivian. I looked at Martin. "I calculated it. Dad," I said. $13,400. That is what I gave you this year. For the roof, for the debts, for the trips. I drove a car with no heat so Vivian could go to a spa in Arizona." Martin looked at me. Tears were streaming down his face, tracking through the gray stubble on his cheeks. "I didn't know," he whispered. "Maggie, I swear, I thought... She said she was handling the accounts. She said you offered..." You didn't know because you didn't want to know, I said, because it was easier to let me pay for it than to face her. I pointed to the screen. But you know now. You see what happens when the door is closed. You see what she does to me. You see what she does to you. Vivian lunged. It was a desperate, flailing movement. She tried to grab the laptop, maybe to smash it, maybe just to stop the images. "Turn it off," she screamed. But she didn't get to the laptop. Martin stood up. He caught her wrist. I had never seen my father look strong. For 20 years, he had been a slump-shouldered, passive man. But in that moment, griping the wrist of the woman who had played him for a fool, he looked formidable. "Sit down, Vivian," Martin said. His voice was low, guttural. "Martin, you are hurting me," she wailed, trying the old line one last time. "I do not care," Martin said. He looked at Mr. Sterling. "The mediation is over," Martin said. "There will be no settlement. There will be no non-disclosure agreement." He looked at Elena. "Ms. Price, does my daughter have grounds to press charges?" "Extensive grounds," Elena said. "Assault, filing a false police report, identity theft, fraud." Martin nodded. He released Vivian's wrist with a shove that sent her stumbling back into her chair. "Good," Martin said. "Do it." "Martin," Vivian gasped, her eyes wide with genuine shock. "You cannot be serious. I am your wife." "You are not my wife," Martin said, his voice breaking. "You are the woman who beat my child and made me watch." He turned to me. He didn't ask for a hug. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He looked too ashamed to even ask for a glass of water. "I am sorry," he choked out. "I am so sorry, Maggie." I looked at him, at the ruin of the man I had spent my life trying to please. I felt sadness, yes, but mostly, I felt light. The weight of the secret was gone. The truth was out, projected in high definition on a 10-foot screen. I looked at Pumpkin in the video, frozen in mid-step, his green eyes watching the scene. My lawyer closed the laptop. The screen went black. But the light in the room remained. The shadows were gone. The silence that followed Martin's declaration was not the empty silence of a void. It was heavy, pressurized, the kind of silence that precedes the collapse of a building. Vivian was staring at her husband as if he had suddenly spoken in a foreign language. Her mouth was slightly open, her face pale beneath the layers of expensive foundation, the mask of the grieving. Fragile victim had not just slipped, it had shattered on the floor, right alongside her credibility. Elena Price did not give anyone time to recover. She sensed the shift in the room's atmosphere, the way the power dynamic had tilted violently in our favor, and she moved to capitalize on it. She closed the laptop with a decisive snap, drawing everyone's eyes back to her. "Now that we have established the facts," Elena said, her voice cool and professional, "let us discuss the consequences. Based on the video evidence we just viewed, combined with the financial records my client has compiled, we have grounds to file immediate criminal charges against Mrs. Cole for domestic battery. Given the identity theft regarding the insurance documents, we are also looking at felony fraud. Furthermore, we will be seeking a temporary restraining order to ensure Maggie's safety." Vivian flinched. "Restraining order? I am her mother." "You are her abuser," Elena corrected, her tone devoid of sympathy. "And you are currently a liability to yourself. If we take this to court, Mrs. Cole, those videos become public record, the assault, the staged fall, the theft, everything." It was a kill shot. Vivian cared about nothing more than her image. The idea of her country club friends, her neighbors, and the Silverford Charity Board seeing her throw herself into a china cabinet to frame her stepdaughter was a fate worse than prison for her. Before Vivian could spiral into another denial, Martin spoke again. His voice was hoarse, sounding like a machine that had not been used in years, but the tremor was gone. "There will be no need for a restraining order against me," Martin said. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. He did not look at Vivian. He looked at Mr. Sterling, the opposing lawyer. "I want to revoke the power of attorney immediately. whatever paperwork she filed. I want it withdrawn today. Mr. Sterling nodded slowly, sensing which way the wind was blowing. We can arrange that. Mr. Elliot. And, Martin continued, gaining volume, I want a full, independent forensic audit of our joint accounts for the last 10 years. I want to know where every single dollar went. I want to know how much of my daughter's money was funneled into your personal accounts. Vivian gasped. Martin, how can you say that? Our money? We are a team. Martin said, emphasizing the word with a force that made the water glasses on the table tremble. I am requesting the audit, not we. There is no we right now. Vivian, there is just me, looking at the evidence of what you did to my child. Beside him, Sophie let out a sound that was half sob, half gasp. She had been shrinking into her chair throughout the video, but now, the reality of her own role in this tragedy seemed to be crashing down on her. She looked at me across the table. Her face, usually so composed and confident, was a ruin of smeared mascara and red blotches. Maggie, she whispered, I really thought she was hurt. She told me you pushed her. She showed me the bruise. I know, I said softly. I posted that caption, Sophie cried, her voice rising in panic. I made fun of you. I told everyone you were crazy. I was just trying to be the good daughter so she would not yell at me too. She stopped, her hand flying to her mouth as the realization hit her. She had been played. She had been used as the carrot to my stick. Vivian had triangulated us, pitting the perfect sister against the troubled one to keep us both under control. I am so sorry, Sophie sobbed, putting her head in her hands. I am so sorry, Maggie. I looked at my sister. I saw the guilt eating her alive. Part of me wanted to reach across the table and comfort her, to tell her it was okay, that we were both victims, but another part of me, the part that had spent 13 years being the scapegoat while she enjoyed the spoils of being the golden child, held back. I nodded at her. It was an acknowledgement, not an absolution. I hear you, Sophie, I said. We can talk about it, just not today. Vivian, seeing her allies crumble one by one, decided to launch a final, desperate offensive. She stood up, her hands slamming onto the table. This is ridiculous, she screamed, her voice shrill and ugly. You are all hysterical. So I lost my temper once or twice? So what? Raising children is hard. Maggie was a difficult child. She is doing this to spite me. She wants to destroy this family because of a few old bruises. The room went dead silent. Elena Price looked at Vivian over the rim of her glasses. Mrs. Cole, she said, her voice terrifyingly quiet. We are in a mediation setting. This is a courtesy. If you continue to minimize the assault we just witnessed on video, I will end this meeting, walk down the street to the courthouse, and file the civil suit. And I promise you, when that video is played on the local news, the headline will not be about a difficult child. Mr. Sterling leaned in close to Vivian. He whispered something in her ear. I caught the words, unwinnable, exposure, and prison time. Vivian's face crumpled. She looked at Martin, expecting him to intervene, to save her as he always had. Martin was looking at the wall, his jaw set in stone. She looked at Sophie, but Sophie was refusing to look up. She was alone, for the first time in her marriage. The manipulation had failed. Mr. Sterling cleared his throat. He looked tired. My client is prepared to accept the terms of a settlement to avoid litigation. Elena nodded. Here are the terms. Vivian Cole will vacate the Elliott family residence for a period of no less than 60 days to allow for a cooling-off period. She will withdraw all claims of elder abuse and assault against Margaret Elliott with prejudice. She will agree to attend mandatory anger management and psychiatric therapy, and she will sign a document admitting that the allegations made against Margaret were false. I will not leave my house, Vivian hissed. It is my house, Martin said. His voice was flat. I bought it before we met. My name is on the deed. You will go to your sister's, or a hotel. I do not care. but you are not sleeping under the same roof as me tonight." Vivian looked at him, shocked into silence. The ATM had closed. The doormat had grown spines. Elena turned to me. "Maggie, regarding damages, we can sue for the $13,000, plus pain and suffering, and legal fees. We can likely get a judgment for upwards of $50,000. I looked at the piece of paper in front of me. I looked at the numbers. Then I looked at the video of Pumpkin frozen on the screen. I was tired. I was bone-deep tired of the fighting, the screaming, the constant calculations of who owed what to whom. If I sued for the money, this would drag on for years. There would be depositions. There would be more contact. I would have to see her face again and again. I wanted the money back, yes, but I wanted my life back more. "No," I said. Elena looked at me, surprised. "Maggie, you are entitled to it." "I do not want her money," I said. "I do not want a check from her. I do not want anything that connects her bank account to mine ever again." I looked directly at Vivian. "Here is my condition," I said. "I walk away with $0, but in exchange, you sign a permanent agreement that you will never, ever ask me for a cent again. No medical bills, no nursing home fees, no emergency loans. You are financially dead to me. And any communication regarding the family goes through a lawyer or a family therapist. I will never be in a room alone with you again." I took a breath. "I am buying my freedom. Vivian, keep the $13,000. It is the severance package for my role as your daughter." "Mr. Sterling looked relieved. "We can agree to that." Elena looked at me with respect. She understood. This was not a surrender. It was an eviction. I was evicting Vivian from my future. The papers were drafted on the spot. Vivian signed them with a shaking hand, her signature jagged and angry. Martin signed them with a heavy, deliberate stroke. When it was over, Mr. Sterling packed up his briefcase. "Come along, Mrs. Cole." Vivian stood up. She smoothed her skirt. She tried to summon one last shred of dignity. She looked at Martin. "You will regret this," she spat. "You will be lonely, old, and miserable without me." Martin did not answer. She looked at me. Her eyes were full of pure, distilled hatred. "You think you won?" she whispered. "You have no one." I pointed to the crate on the floor where Pumpkin was sleeping. "I have the only one who matters." Vivian turned and walked out of the glass room. She moved through the hallway alone. There was no audience to applaud her exit. There was no husband rushing to open the door for her. I watched her go. Through the glass wall, I saw her silhouette disappear into the elevator. I felt a massive weight lift off my chest, a physical sensation of lightness that made me dizzy. It was over. The door was closed. Martin remained in his chair. He looked older than I had ever seen him, but his eyes were clear. He turned to me. His hands were shaking slightly. "Maggie," he said. His voice broke. I know I cannot fix this. I know 13 years cannot be erased with a signature." He looked at Aunt Ruth, who was nodding at him with a stern, guarded approval. Then he looked back at me. "I failed you," Martin said. "I was so afraid of being alone that I let her hurt you. I saw the signs, and I looked away because I was a coward. I chose my comfort over your safety." Tears spilled down his cheeks. He did not wipe them away. "If you never want to speak to me again," he said, "I will understand. I deserve that. But if you are willing, if you can ever find it in your heart to give me a chance, I want to start over. I want to be your father. And this time, I will not let any door stand between us. I will not let anyone close me off from you again." I looked at him. I saw the remorse. It was real. It wasn't the performative guilt of the past. It was the raw, ugly grief of a man who realized he had almost lost his child forever. "I need time, Dad," I said honestly. "I cannot just come over for Sunday dinner like nothing happened." "I know," Martin said quickly. "Take all the time you need. A year, 10 years. I will be waiting." He stood up and walked over to where Pumpkin's carrier sat. He picked it up gently. "Here," he said. handing the carrier to me. "He is yours. He always was. He never liked her anyway. He was just waiting for you to come get him." I took the handle of the carrier. The weight was familiar and grounding. "Thank you," I said. Martin hesitated. Then he reached out and squeezed my shoulder. It was a tentative, awkward touch, but it was gentle. "Drive safe, Maggie." He turned and walked out of the room, Sophie trailing behind him. Sophie paused at the door, looked at me one last time, mouthed, "I'm sorry," and followed our father. I was left alone in the room with Elena and Ruth. Elena let out a long breath and smiled. "Well, that went better than expected." Ruth walked over and hugged me. "I am proud of you, kid. Your mother would be so proud of you." I hugged her back, burying my face in her shoulder. It is finally over. 10 minutes later, I walked out into the lobby of the building. The world outside had transformed. The gray sky had opened up, and the first real snow of the winter was falling. Big, soft flakes drifted down, coating the city in a clean, white blanket. The air was crisp and cold, biting at my cheeks. I hugged the carrier to my chest. Pumpkin let out a small meow from inside, complaining about the cold. "We are going home, buddy," I whispered. "Real home." My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was an email from Elena, confirming that the temporary agreement was filed. Then, a text message popped up. It was from Martin. "I am standing on the sidewalk. I know you are coming out. I am not going to come up to you. I just wanted to make sure your car started okay in the cold. When you are ready, Maggie, I will be outside. No more closed doors, just open air." I looked up, across the street. Standing by his car was my father. He was brushing snow off his windshield. He saw me come out. He didn't wave. He didn't try to approach. He just stood there, keeping watch, making sure I was safe. He gave me a small nod. I nodded back. I gripped the handle of the carrier tighter. I took a deep breath of the freezing, clean air. It tasted like freedom. I turned my back on the courthouse, on the lawyer's office, on the memories of the bruises and the debts. I walked toward my car, my boots crunching in the fresh snow. The path ahead was white and unmarked. I didn't know exactly where it led, but for the first time in my life, I was the one holding the map. Thank you so much for listening to Maggie's story. It's been a long journey from the dark hallway to this snowy street, and I hope you felt every moment of her fight for freedom. I'd love to know where you are tuning in from today. Are you listening from a cozy room in London, a busy street in New York, or maybe somewhere quiet in Sydney? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of justice and resilience, please subscribe to the Lila Revenge Stories channel. Hit that like button and smash the hype button to help this story reach even more people. Your support means the world to us. Stay strong, and see you in the next story.